Hello, everyone, and welcome to Mastering Diversity and Inclusion to Raise Finances Impact. My name is Caroline Boyce, and I'm the National Membership Manager and Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Director with the CFO. Before we get started with our fantastic fireside chat, I want to tell you a quick story. As you know, the CFO Leadership Council has several great initiatives, such as our Emerging Leaders Program and CXO Now Network of Women. This summer, Jack McCullough, founder of the CFO, decided that it was important to create a diversity, equity, and inclusion initiative. Jack called me up and he stated that he would like me to work with him on this initiative, and I was happy to lead it. I got off the phone with Jack and I realized that I never have done anything like this before. And the first person I thought of was Nadine Augusta, our speaker today. Nadine and I have been friends for years, and we worked at Bank of America together. I called up Nadine and I told her I needed her assistance. And not only did she answer the call, but she took the time with Jack, myself, and colleague Pamela Franklin and guided us in setting up the initiative. I am excited to announce that we will be kicking off our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Initiative in December. Currently, we have an advisory board consisting mostly of CFOs, about 18 of them, who are assisting in creating programs for the initiative. We will have a website which will go live next week, and our first program will be held in December. Another great part of our initiative will be the Ascend program. The Ascend program is an opportunity for senior financial executives from underrepresented backgrounds to receive a free 1-year all-access membership to the CFO Leadership Council. More information will be available on our website next week. Stay tuned. And now for our program. Today's fireside chat will be moderated by Eugene Reagans, Alfred P. Sloan Professor of Management, a Professor of Organization Studies, and the Associate Dean of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at the MIT Sloan School of Management. Ray studies the origin and influence of social capital on knowledge transfer, learning rates, and overall team performance. More specifically, he examines how demographic characteristics such as race, age, and gender affect the development of network relations. He also considers how particular network structures affect performance outcomes, including the transfer of knowledge among individuals and the productivity of research and development teams. He'll be speaking with Nadine Augusta, America's Head of Diversity and Inclusion at Goldman Sachs, and my friend. Ray and Nadine, thank you for your time and expertise. Please take it away.
Thank you so much, Carolyn. Thank you for that warm and kind introduction. Nadine.
Thank you.
I'm really looking forward to our session together, although officially I'm the moderator. I'm hoping that we're going to have more of a conversation.
Absolutely.
You doing most of the talking, though.
We're going to get you talking too.
Okay, let's start right off the top. So in your opinion, why is diversity important?
In 2020, what a question. The country we live in, the world we live in is changing demographically. And companies need diverse leaders who reflect the changing marketplace. So as I think about the work that I do at Goldman Sachs and the work that I've done over the course of my career, it's necessary to recognize that the demographics is changing and that we do have employees in the workplace who are from different backgrounds, who look different than I do, or than you do. And you really need to know how to manage that talent and how to engage that talent. Organizations need to fully engage that talent to be able to reap the benefits. So diversity and inclusion is extremely important. I must say, one of the things that come to mind for me is around the business case. I always get the question around the business case for diversity and inclusion. Leaders always want to know that. And as a diversity leader, one of the things that I would say is, the business case is so strong and so well known that you can Google it and you'll find countless articles and research papers that would highlight the business case for diversity and inclusion. Organizations and universities like MIT has done lots of research around diversity and inclusion. Organizations like Deloitte and McKinsey has done a ton of research around diversity, equity, and inclusion, and the business case. And one of the things that I want to highlight, and I just want to say this because I think for those who really need to hear, the sort of words around business case and the value of diversity. One of the things that I want to highlight is that a lot of this research really points to the value to the bottom line, the impact to the bottom line. And so McKinsey's research of why diversity matters, that was released back in 2015 and has since been updated, highlighted a few things. Companies in a top quartile of diversity financially outperform those that are in the bottom quartile. Gender diverse companies are 15% more likely to outperform. Racial and ethnically diverse companies are 35% more likely to outperform. And so there is lots of information out there that highlights why diversity is important.
Yeah, I often get this question myself, and I'm glad you answered it the way you did. I sometimes want to simply say, well, let's just look out the window for a few moments.
Right.
Let's just look in the world and see what's happening in the world. And we have to appreciate those kind of dynamics are happening in our organizations. They're just not nearly as easy to see.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think that that's such an important point. The society that we live within doesn't just stop at the door of our organizations. And so all of the differences and opinions and values and beliefs that exist outside of our organizations also exist inside of our organizations. And it's important that we recognize that.
They don't take those issues off when they walk into the building or when they start the Zoom call.
They do not.
So I'll mention that, it's funny, you mentioned the importance of research and how much there is.
Mm-hmm.
I just started my position as the associate dean. And one of the reasons why I started was there is so much research out there that guides the decisions that I'm making. And so this isn't something that I'm, doing off the cuff or making up, is that there's research out there that's really guiding my thinking on these questions. So there's comfort in that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I hope we get to the point where we talk about what colleges and universities can do more.
I'm filibustering.
I have some thoughts on that.
So I'll ask you another question then. So what role do leaders play in facilitating and managing diversity in organizations?
Absolutely. So the tone is set from the top. I think that's something that we all, always hear. And it's true. The CEO of the organization, the executive team of the organization is responsible for setting the tone that really emphasizes the need for diversity, equity, and inclusion. And they need to live it. They need to model behavior they want to see in the rest of the organization from the rest of their leadership. I've definitely been in situations where you have leaders talk about the fact that diversity and inclusion is imperative, that it's an important thing for the organization to really focus on and get right. And those same leaders will be the ones who would make many hiring decisions that where the outcome is not very diverse. Or they will make promotional decisions in the organization that is not inclusive. And so the tone absolutely has to be set from the top. Our leaders have to model the behaviors that they want to see in the rest of the organization.
When we met, you shared with me this idea that good leaders lead inclusively.
Mhm.
Could I ask you to say a little bit more about that?
Absolutely. From my perspective, lots of companies have, many of our companies have leadership programs, leadership initiatives, and they're well thought out leadership initiatives. One of the things that I will say is that it's been surprising to me that so many of those initiatives that I've been exposed to don't have inclusive leadership at the center. And I think that inclusive leadership really just needs to be embedded because it's part and parcel of of good leadership. And so, if you're leading a team inclusively, then your team feels valued, feels respected, feels they're able to really contribute. They feel like they're being treated fairly. And all of that is necessary to reap the benefits as we talk about diversity and inclusion and bringing more diversity into your organization. You're not going to reap the benefits of diversity unless you have inclusive leadership.
You know, at MIT, we have a saying that we're smart enough to know we're smarter together.
Yes, absolutely. So
Right?
true.
And
So
in,
true.
and in some ways, the business case for diversity is about individual development. And so Carolyn mentioned the kind of research that I do. And part of that is people who have more diverse networks, they learn faster,
Mhm.
their performance is higher. And that's a byproduct of being exposed to people who see and solve problems in different ways.
Absolutely, absolutely. The learning that we get from interacting with and working with people who are different from ourselves, it really helps to make us better, right? We work harder, and we're much more thoughtful and careful. When it comes to the work that we're looking to deliver when we're doing that in a diverse environment. And so there are many benefits to organizations if if you have more diversity, and for teams if there's more diversity on teams that are working together to solve a business problem.
Nadine, have you been reading my work on teams?
Did you know? Did you not know?
You know, that's it's I was doing one of these panels over the summer and someone said to me, I couldn't imagine working in an organization where everyone looked like me. That'd be so boring. And
Yes, and I would agree with that.
I was thinking more people need to have this mindset.
Yep.
More people need to have that mindset. In fact, we know that people who have a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset,
Mhm.
those are the people who are simply more comfortable with diversity.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we're in a world today where if we're not comfortable with diversity, we're going to have to get comfortable with diversity. Organizations are not going to be sustainable if they're not diverse and if they don't embrace diversity. And our leaders are not going to be one, they're not going to be strong leaders if they don't know how to lead inclusively. But if they don't know how to or not comfortable with managing diversity, it's going to be problematic for them as they move along in their careers. So it behooves all of us to get comfortable with it, get with it.
I like that. That's gonna be one of our new sayings.
Yes.
You know, you when you say diversity, the first word, and then the second word is often inclusion.
Yes.
It's not enough to be diverse. There has to be something, the culture and climate, where more and more people feel comfortable coming together. Now we're close to the question that you wanted me to ask. And do university and colleges play a role in developing leaders who are more inclusive?
Absolutely. As a diversity leader, I feel that one of the reasons why we spend so much time talking about the business case of diversity and inclusion and hosting unconscious bias training and all kinds of diversity and inclusion training, inclusive leadership training, one of the reasons is because our colleges and universities don't do it or don't do it enough. I think it's necessary for colleges and universities to embed diversity and inclusion in their curriculum. We are doing the jobs that colleges and universities should be doing. That's my perspective.
And so I was guilty. I took
You
my,
agree?
I actually do agree.
Mhm.
If you would have asked me that question in April, if we're doing a good job teaching diversity, I would have said, of course we're doing a good job. I would look at the curriculum at MIT and I could check off all the things that we're doing. I then started spending more time with our students.
Mhm.
And from talking to them, it became clear to me that we taught diversity in a way where it wasn't tangible,
Mhm.
where
Very theoretical.
it was theoretical. It didn't feel like it spoke to them, and
Mhm.
it didn't feel like it spoke to their lived experiences. And so this is quite an indictment for a diversity scholar to hear that from his students, but they're right. And so we totally revamped our curriculum. Our core curriculum, every class has multiple sessions, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Our core electives at MIT also have multiple sections on diversity, equity, and inclusion. Not many business schools could say that. I'd like to say it's because of me and my colleague Fiona, who's also helping me with this. It's not, it's because of the students. We finally started listening to them.
That's fantastic. And hopefully, as more and more, universities out there see what you're doing, they'll also follow along because it's definitely necessary. In the world that we live in today, it's absolutely necessary. And you think it would be helpful for organizations like mine, for the universities to do their part, and for the students, or the employees that we hire to come prepared, and where we don't have to teach them from scratch, about what we expect in terms of, their inclusive leadership and why diversity is important, and the behaviors that they need to model in the organization.
Something that we've done is we've basically taken our model of leadership development, which has these two, in my opinion, core ideas. Uh, that's the comfort with contributing. You would think that students at MIT, that everyone would feel comfortable contributing their ideas. It turns out it's not true. In a context like MIT, Goldman Sachs, not everyone feels comfortable. And so part of leadership development is providing people with the comfort of knowing that they belong and that we want their voice to be heard. But
Absolutely.
that creates a problem. It almost happened with us, where if
Mm,
my voice is heard and you're using your voice, we have to become comfortable with conflict. And so
yes,
these are the two things that we're teaching our students to manage: comfort with contributing and comfort managing conflict. And they get that.
that's
And
fantastic.
then we say to them, now diversity. The fact of the matter is, some of us are not going to feel like we belong because we're part of a numerical minority in some way. And so we get them to appreciate these distinct challenges that their colleagues face because they're simply different, and the role that they might play in creating that discomfort. And then the last part that we get them to appreciate is when we hear ideas from women and people of color, they're often dismissed or ignored.
Mhm.
And so the conflict piece over ideas becomes more salient. And so what we're trying to get our students to appreciate now is the role that they play in creating this climate where diversity either thrives or doesn't thrive. And we're trying to make that part of the leadership development process. I don't think I would have said that in April because I don't think our antenna was attuned. We had the skills, we had the knowledge, but we weren't doing the work. We were not doing the work.
Well, I think a lot of organizations can say that, lots and lots of companies, and people woke up over the summer, right? with the murder of George Floyd. It was eye-opening for many people, and for many of us, it was the only thing that was surprising about it was on video, but it was eye-opening for a lot of people and a lot of organizations and companies. Across the country have really focused on tackling it and hosting conversations within the organization. And so I think it's really, really, it's important that you're doing that at the university level. It's important that companies are getting more and more comfortable with having the conversations internally, because as you mentioned earlier, you don't leave what's happening in society out the door. And so you really do have to have a comfort level within your organization to have those really difficult conversations, those uncomfortable conversations. And the more and more you have those conversations, the more and more they become less, uncomfortable, right? It becomes easier, and you're able to have them with ease and of course authentically. So it's really good to hear that you're doing that.
Those are, you keep mentioning magical words. It's authentic.
Yes.
Bring their authentic selves to work. And so part of what we did in orientation were sessions around racial dialogue and difficult conversations.
Mhm.
I want to move to a different topic for a minute. And ask you, how can a small organization become more diverse?
Absolutely. I think the same way a large organization becomes more diverse. A small organization or any organization, uh, leadership should review and the talent pipeline. So you should really understand what you have within your organization as it relates to talent. You should monitor the attrition and the promotion rate of your diverse talent. You should aim to attract talent with a focused strategy that targets diverse populations. Anyone can do that. Whether you're recruiting on the job boards, find job boards that have more diversity represented. Whether you're recruiting through an agency, require diverse slates of talent when you give the agency a role to recruit from. So every organization can focus on that. I will also point out that diversity and inclusion initiatives should clearly be stated in the global business strategy. If it's truly important for your company to do better and to get better as it relates to diversity and inclusion, it really needs to be a part of your business strategy, much like any other business problem that you're trying to solve or initiative that you're trying to launch in your organization. The final thing that I would say to that is the results of your efforts should be measured and achievements rewarded. So if you do all of these things, you in your organizations can become more diverse. Mhm.
Right. So the things that we value, we monitor and we reward. We
Exactly.
understand this. We
What
understand
measures gets done. We're talking with a lot of CFOs here. What gets measured gets done.
what gets measured gets done. I'm going to have to remember that one. What do you think of firms that recruit through networks? What's the role between recruiting through networks and your ability to create a diverse labor force?
Yeah, recruiting through networks, I think, is a really it's one avenue, one source of talent. So if I think of the CFO population, one organization that I've worked with in the past, for example, is an organization called the was it National Black Association of Accountants or National Association of Black Accountants, I believe it is NABA. And so there are organizations like that companies can partner with to access diverse talent, and you can be very targeted in what you're looking for. NABA focuses on finance talent with financial backgrounds. You can go to National Black MBA, for example, or Alpha, which is a Hispanic focused organization that's more broad based in terms of the type of talent that you'll find. So I think that it's an important avenue to and source for diverse talent that many organizations use, big and small.
I like to remind my colleagues um, that a search process that doesn't produce diverse candidates is biased, because they'll often say to me, well, if we're looking for specific candidates, aren't we being biased?
Mhm.
And I'll turn it around and say, well, if you're using a search process that doesn't find diverse talent when it exists, then the process that you're using is biased. And so that's one way of thinking about, the other side of bias.
I can't agree with you more. One of the things that you'll often hear is we search for diverse talent, but we couldn't find anyone, or there's not a lot of diversity in this particular field. And maybe there's some merit to that. But 9 times out of 10, I think that if you were to be more targeted in your search, if you were to be more open to the talent that is presented to you, you can find diversity. And that's across the board. I think also one of the things that leaders and as a diversity practitioner that we sometimes struggle with is to get our leaders to think differently about the talent and the skills and capabilities that they're looking for. And so, for example, you have a leader who wants to hire an equity trader, and they want to hire someone who did that exact same job at another company. Whereas you can, if you do that, uh, the diversity of the slate of talent that has done that exact same job at another company is not going to be very strong. But if you were to think outside the box and look for someone who may be steeped in, operations that focuses on supporting the equity trading desk and knows the business inside out, you can bring them into your organization and they can do the job, and that will give you a broader base of diverse candidates to select from. So I do encourage leaders to think more broadly about the talent source, one, but also the skills and capabilities, to think more about the skills and capabilities they're looking for, rather than looking for talent that has done the exact thing that you're hiring for.
You're describing a program that I'm part of with a consortium of schools looking to increase diversity among faculty members in business schools and economics.
Mhm.
And the barriers to entry, as we've looked at this problem more closely, isn't the latent talent and ability. It's more surface, it's more experience based. And so we've thought about ways to give students these experiences. Many of them might decide they don't want to be academics, but we've overcome this barrier that in many ways keeps faculty from becoming more diverse. Let's, I'm horrible with keeping time. Do you mind if we take a look and see if there's some questions in here? There's
Absolutely.
been a number of them. Give me a second to look. How much do you address less visible differences when you speak about diversity?
Oh, absolutely. So, diversity, as I think about my diversity and inclusion strategy, I really look at, assess sort of everything that's happening in the organization, and so looking at hiring and your hiring results, your promotional results, your development programs and who's in your development programs and so on. So you hear us often talk about racial and ethnic diversity. You hear us talk about gender diversity. Disability is another dimension of diversity that we focus on very aggressively in the organization. And so, as you know, there are some disabilities that are visible and some that are not. And so we have initiatives in our organization that really covers both. We also tackle religion. And so from my perspective, religion is one of those dimensions of diversity that are not often discussed when we talk about diversity and inclusion, but it's a really, really important dimension of diversity that touches all of us, whether we're religious or not. And so, you know, as I think about diversity and inclusion strategies, religion is one that's incorporated in that. So we do tackle all types of diversity and inclusion because the goal is really to ensure that all of our employees, regardless of their diversity and regardless of their backgrounds and so on, feel included in our organization, feel welcomed in our organization, and can thrive.
I think that's important. I agree with you 100%. You know, you mentioned that we often just focus in on race and gender. It doesn't mean it's the only element of diversity that's important.
Absolutely.
But I think we have to be honest with ourselves. And I know MIT is a reckoning. Let me use that word. That if we look around, we're doing better, reasonably well on gender. We're doing reasonably well on a number of dimensions. We have 90, 91 faculty of color. If I say African American or Hispanic or Native American, out of 1,100 faculty members.
Wow.
And so the focus on race reflects the fact that we haven't been doing as well as we need to be doing. That doesn't mean that the other dimensions are not important. It's just a fact. Empirically, we've made more progress in other areas.
Absolutely. Completely agree with that. And we often get that. We often get that question and pushback.
We've only got a few more minutes. Let me find another hard question for you.
Bring it on.
Perfect. What about economic inclusion? One thing that has always bothered me is the emergence of running credit checks on new hires and viewing negative results as a barrier to hiring. Do you see this changing?
I actually do see this changing. This is actually, it's not something that we talk about often, but it has been a part of the conversation. I think it really, credit checks don't impact every employee. It generally comes up for employees who, well, we're talking to a CFO audience. So for employees who deal with the dollars and cents in the organization. And so it does come up. I do see that changing. I feel like companies are being much more thoughtful and intentional about when, when your credit report or what they find can be a disqualifier. I don't think that they lead with it being a disqualifier.
So there's a wonderful book. It's not my book, Weapons of Mass Destruction, that describes how these kinds of practices and algorithms advantages and disadvantages specific groups. And I'll end on this because I think we're at the time. Our students in their core classes are now learning how to recognize this kind of bias in algorithms. And they're also learning how to de-bias those algorithms. I think this is critical as more and more decisions are based on algorithms, that we need to recognize that they reflect us. And if we're biased, they're going to be biased.
Absolutely.
Nadine, this has been fantastic for me. I'm hoping we're going to stay in touch.
Absolutely. I thoroughly enjoyed this. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye. Thanks, folks.